Did you know that the narcissist has 4 basic needs to be in relationship with another person, and that we only need 2 for them to stay with us? Hi, my name is Michele Paradise, and today I'm going to be talking about this topic of the 4 needs of a narcissist and how they only require 2 of them from us on the other side of relationship with them in order to stay interested, to stay connected. So the 4 ones are, in no particular order: sex, supply, service, and safety. And I'm going to unpack each one of those so that you have a better understanding of it. And as always, I may use myself from time to time, my own personal experiences, to illustrate what it looked like in my narcissistic relationships, because there were more than one. So sex, it's pretty obvious. Sex, it's not every narcissist, because there are different types of narcissists, but let's look at the classic one, the classic narcissist who, let's say, has a high sex drive. He or she may require that to be matched by their partner. And I won't go into what happens when it's not yet, but I'm just going to explain. Now, a vulnerable narcissist, covert narcissist, I would say vulnerable or cerebral even, sex may not be high on their list of priorities. They may have had sex with their partner to procreate and then have lost interest in it. And they will want somebody that that can match them cerebrally, intellectually. But more about that later. The second one is supply. Now, supply is quite interesting because that is quite abstract. It's a lot of complimenting, boosting the person's ego, adoring them. And this may happen, as you've heard in my other videos, I talk about golden child syndrome. This may happen more with a golden child syndrome type of narcissist. When I say type, I'm talking about the childhood developmental trauma that led to their narcissism. And on that spectrum is golden child syndrome. They have been overly complimented, overly cosseted, and looked after. Their feet hardly touched the ground in their childhood. They got whatever they want. So they may have a very, very high need of supply, where you compliment them and tell them how amazing they are. And they need a lot of reinforcement. They may come home from work and ask how their day was, and they tell you of all their accolades, and you're there like an adoring audience. So while I'm talking about some of these things, I really want you to connect to them and see how you may fit in, or how they may fit into the narcissistic relationship that unfortunately you might be in now, or that you have been in the past, hopefully, and that is over. So supply is more about adoration and being their biggest fan, their biggest audience, even if it's just an audience of one. The third one is service. Now, this is much more tangible. This would be like doing things for the person. Maybe you're a fantastic cook, or you wait on that person. You give them everything they want. You make them drinks, coffees, teas. You make them dinner. You iron their clothes. This isn't just women, by the way. This is not a gender thing here. This can happen on either side or many sides of the spectrum. That you are in service to them. You supply everything they need in their world. You may drive them places. You may edit their books. You may do their accounts. Now, when I say this, I'm not specific. I am talking about romantic relationships here, but this moves over to other relationships, because sometimes we're in relationship, platonically in relationship with somebody, that we still fulfill their needs. Obviously, sex wouldn't be one of them, but supply could definitely be one of them. We massage their ego all the time with our words and telling them how wonderful they are, and also service. We offer them a lot of service. But back to the romantic relationship. So let's say you're in a marriage, a relationship, and service would look like the day-to-day things that you do for that person. As I said, driving them places, editing some of their work if they're a writer, looking at things that they've done for work. Maybe they've done a PowerPoint presentation and they want your opinion on it, and they really value your opinion. So you provide a service to them. Looking after their children is a huge service. Now, when I say their children, I mean your children together. But that is a huge service, because some narcissists will want to have children, and then when they have children, they don't get involved. It's like, and in this case, it usually is the mother that is left holding the baby, and the mother provides a lot of service. And the fourth one is safety, which is huge to many narcissists, because they are, remember, they are the most insecure person in the room. They're not the most secure person in the room. You will probably be much more secure than them. However, some of your woundedness has brought you into relationship with them, which is part of the attraction. Safety can show up in all different ways. That you don't flirt with anybody when you're out with your partner. That's huge for them, because they get very, very distressed if, and when I say flirt with somebody else, I don't mean that you're initiating the flirtation necessarily. It may be coming from the other side. You know, somebody might say, "Can I get you a drink? You look very nice tonight. I love the way you've done your hair." And the narcissist will find that very difficult to navigate. And I'll tell you a little story about a previous client, which is quite disturbing. So maybe a trigger warning here, but she was my client, and very attractive woman. And they went out, her and her husband went out to a party, and exactly that thing happened. Another man was talking to her. Her drink was empty. Her glass was empty. He offered to get her another glass of wine or whatever. And also at some point complimented her on how she looked that night. Not overtly flirtatious, just, in some senses, you could say he was just being very kind and looking after her. And the husband was watching this. He didn't do anything at the time, but when they got home, he beat her up very badly, so badly that she ended up in the hospital. And you would hope that she would not go back into that relationship, but unfortunately she did. And when we were talking about her decision making and her strategy around this, she said, well, when he came to see me in the hospital, he told me that the reason he lost his temper with me because he couldn't bear to watch somebody flirting with me, and he loves me so much. And he hurt her. I know it may not make any sense logically. We're not talking about logic here. We're talking about passion, emotions, and how the narcissist sees the world, that they own that person. And she continued to go back to him for a while until she really woke up and realized that this was not a sustainable relationship. But it just gives you a bird's eye view of how that can look in real time, because they don't feel safe in themselves. They really need the safety from you. Other ways safety could be is, and I talked about this in another video, betrayal blindness. They may cheat on you and you accept it. You turn away. You don't look at it. You accept that this is just who they are. You love them so much, and you get so much else out of the relationship, in your opinion, that you accept this betrayal. And that allows them to feel safe, because they can go out, and this was my relationship with my husband. He could go out and have many affairs and sex with other women and come back to me, and I was servicing him because I had his children and I was looking at the children. There was a lot of safety because I wasn't going to stray. So using myself as an example in those four, the sex, supply, service, and safety, having small children, and I'll be very honest here, the sex wasn't at the top of the list. However, service was very much there, because it wasn't serving him, but I was serving the relationship by looking after our children. And he was very much the kind of father that opted out, had the children. He wasn't a cerebral narcissist. He was more of a classic narcissist, and actually a malignant narcissist. But he found his need, his supply sexually somewhere else. So that kept him. Now, this is a very interesting point I want to make. We only need to have two of those for the narcissist to stay in relationship with us. If we drop below 2 to 1, they usually discard us. So I'll illustrate that for you. In my marriage, there was sex. There was not so much supply. I wasn't, massaging his ego and things like that. But of course, there were times, certainly in the beginning of our relationship and marriage, where I did think he was an amazing person and he was successful. So I would, reinforce that. there was definitely a lot of safety because I was a monogamous person in my relationship. I There were times that men might be very kind to me and that might distress him, which I did see, and he would get extremely jealous, which I know is strange while he was out there doing all these other things. Um, and there was just a lot of safety. So there was sex originally at the beginning, there was service, not a lot of supply, and there was safety. After having children, the sex dissipated. And that was very early on in my having my children. So he took that opportunity to find it somewhere else. Then, as I began to learn about his other relationships and, betrayal, my my connected to there was a lot of betrayal blindness, I will say, but my connectedness to him diminished, and I certainly was pulling away. I was pulling all these other things away from him. So I was pulling away the service. I wasn't that interested in providing things for him except looking after our children, but that eliminated his needs. I was very much interested in looking after the children, obviously. And I kind of moved my focus away from him, which I think was very obvious to him, and put a lot of my attention on my children. It took me a long time to wake up to the betrayal blindness, and ultimately I did, and then I left. So there was a lot of devaluation, obviously. At the beginning, there was love bombing. Then there was a lot of devaluation because he was into betrayal and taking his needs elsewhere, getting his needs met elsewhere. And then in that devaluation phase, I began to wake up and I began to see that this wasn't a healthy, safe relationship for myself and for my children to be in. So I really began to pull back. And by that point, I had maybe half of one of those needs, you know, the service, looking after our children. And we remained together for a while until I filed for divorce. And I think it's probably safe to say that he discarded me way before I was able to discard him. But it wasn't so much a physical discarding. It was more of an emotional discarding. So I hope that helps. And I'm going to give you a couple other scenarios that have nothing to do with me, because that's enough about me. But there is also those situations. I talked about cerebral narcissists. So let's use that as an example. So the sex was there at the beginning, let's say, of the relationship. Not always, because sometimes that's not even required from a cerebral narcissist. The cerebral narcissist will just need to be matched in the level of intelligence, or have that partner adore their intelligence and their success through the use of their intelligence. So these people could be, just for example, they could be authors, they could be professors, male or female, and they really live in that cerebral world and they like that to be stimulated. So sex is really not a big thing for them. So in a relationship with a cerebral narcissist, this might look like they have a lot of safety with you because they know that you're there for them. You're not you're not betraying them. You're not looking at other men or women. So they feel very safe in that relationship. There may be a lot of service because sometimes cerebral narcissists live in an absolute bubble. Everything is what they focus on that they do, like writing or teaching or research. That's another big one. So they live in a bubble. They may not cook or clean or wash their own clothes or anything like that. They're almost rendered incapable. So they might want somebody in relationship with them that does all of those things. So safety is a big one. In that, you don't have to be as intelligent as they are. You just have to be able to be in that space with them and their intelligence. Of course, they would also like that you could match their intelligence and have deep and meaningful conversations, but it's not necessary. So in that relationship, you may have a lot of supply, telling them how wonderful they are, boasting about their success with other people. There may be service because they can't look after themselves. And there may be levels of safety because you are inward focused on them. Now, if some of those begin to drop off, let's say you meet somebody else and you start an affair, a relationship with somebody else, that's definitely going to affect that relationship. And maybe you lose interest in the service. Maybe you don't really want to do these things anymore, that you're tired of cooking, cleaning, washing, ironing clothes. So I hope that gives you an insight. There's so much more to it, but I hope that gives you an insight to what it is that the narcissist is looking for. And I remember one woman said to me, well, he has said to me that he wants somebody that cooks and cleans. He said this to her, but I don't. And then when I drilled down a little bit further, I asked her what in those four that she does supply to him. And she said, well, I certainly supply sex to him. I certainly supply safety because I don't want to be with anybody else. And he knows that. And I provide service in other ways. And I said, there you go. There you go. It's, she would take him places and pick him up, and she would manage his life. That's another big one, becoming a manager of their life. She would do all the appointments and things like that. So he overlooked the need for a woman to cook and clean and wash and iron his clothes, which is one of the things that he said he really wanted. So I hope that helps to understand this a little bit more. So remember, they have four needs: sex, supply, service, and safety. You need to provide two of those for them to stay in relationship with you. And when that goes beneath two to one or none, they will most likely discard you. So I also want to say thank you very much for listening. And I have an ebook, which is a 30-day journal of prompts to guide you to self-healing and self-awareness. The link is below. Please subscribe to my channel. There will be many more videos on this and many other topics. And all that remains for me to say is thank you very much for listening today, and I look forward to seeing you soon.